Her screams echoed through the empty garage, raw, broken, almost animalistic. Karen didn't stop. With one hand twisted in the woman's hair and the other gripping the buzzing razor, she carved through the long, dark strands like she was enjoying it. Each swipe of the blade wasn't just cruelty, it was entertainment for her. The woman begged, shaking, tears mixing with the fallen hair around her feet. But Karen only smirked and pressed harder, whispering, "You should have stayed in your lane." Then everything froze. A shadow moved at the door. Heavy footsteps. A chilling silence swallowed the room. Karen's smile vanished. The razor slipped from her fingers and clattered onto the floor. Because standing there, watching the scene, was her husband. The same husband everyone whispered about. The man rumored to be a Mafia boss. And the look in his eyes said he'd just walked in on something that would change everything. If you're watching this right now, I want to ask you something deeply personal. Which city are you watching my video from? Go ahead, drop your city's name in the comments below. I always love seeing how far these stories travel across the USA and beyond. And if you're new here, take 1 second, just one, and hit that subscribe button so you never miss the stories that expose the darkest sides of ordinary neighborhoods. Now, let's talk about the moment everything changed. The title you just read isn't exaggerated. It's not a metaphor. It's not dramatized. It's exactly what happened, word for word. A woman moved into a quiet suburban neighborhood hoping for peace. She brought her daughter, her job, her dreams, a fresh start. She didn't know the HOA president. Karen had a reputation for crossing lines no one else dared to. Power made her reckless. Control made her cruel. And boredom? That made her dangerous. It started small, complaints, warnings, petty fines. But one day, Karen crossed the line between authority and insanity. She dragged a woman, someone who posed no threat, someone who simply existed outside her rules, into a secluded garage and shaved her head clean. Not for justice, not for order, but for fun. But what Karen didn't know, what she couldn't possibly have imagined, was that the woman she humiliated was married to a man whose world operated by very different rules. A man feared by criminals, respected by the streets, and whispered about by every cop. A man known for one thing: no one touches his family. This is the story of the moment he walked in, the silence that swallowed the room, and the storm that followed. Let's begin. The morning everything began felt strangely normal. The kind of quiet, steady morning where sunlight spreads across the neighborhood just right, and the air smells like freshly cut grass. The woman, her name was Elena, stepped outside her front door with a mug of coffee and a sense of hope. She had moved here only 3 weeks ago, desperate to rebuild her life after a rough divorce and an exhausting battle for custody of her daughter. This community, with its tidy lawns and clean streets, looked like the perfect place to breathe again. But she didn't know someone had been watching her since day one. Karen, the HOA president, the self-appointed queen of the street, and the woman who could turn peace into poison with just one glare. It started with tiny things that felt too small to take seriously. A note on Elena's door saying her trash bin wasn't placed at the correct angle. A warning for using a doormat not approved by HOA guidelines. A complaint about her daughter's bicycle being left near the porch for longer than 5 minutes. At first, Elena tried to ignore it. She knew women like Karen existed in every neighborhood, bored, bitter, craving power. She assumed Karen would get tired of the game. But Karen didn't get tired. She got obsessed. Her attitude changed the moment she realized something about Elena, something that triggered her in a way no one could really explain. Karen hated confident women, especially the ones who stayed quiet, minded their own business, and refused to give her attention. Elena had unintentionally become Karen's new project. One morning, Elena walked out to find her rose bushes trampled and a warning letter taped to her windshield. Another day, she found Karen taking pictures of her lawn, pacing back and forth like a predator circling prey. "Is everything okay?" Elena asked gently, trying to defuse tension. Karen didn't answer. She just stared, cold, calculating, almost shaking with rage for reasons Elena couldn't understand. This is your final warning, Karen said, shoving a clipboard forward. You're violating multiple HOA codes. For what? Elena asked, genuinely confused. Karen scanned the page she had clearly prepared ahead of time. For excessive emotional disturbance. Elena blinked. What does that even mean? Your daughter laughs too loudly. Your dog barks at night. Your wind chimes are distracting. Your presence is disruptive. Every sentence felt more unhinged than the last. Elena took a deep breath. Karen, none of that is illegal. And none of it hurts anyone. Karen's smile was tight and unnatural. People like you think you can just come in here and break harmony. But I'm not going to let you ruin what I've built. This wasn't about rules. It was personal. And Elena felt the shift, like the ground beneath her wasn't safe anymore. Later that afternoon, when Elena's daughter left for school, she heard a noise outside. A sharp metallic tap. A strange rustling. When she stepped out, she saw Karen standing dangerously close to her driveway, holding a small camera, taking close-up shots of every inch of her car. "Excuse me," Elena said firmly. "You can't just touch my property." Karen stepped back, crossing her arms. "I'm documenting evidence." "For what?" "For future consequences." Elena's heart tightened. The air felt heavier. She suddenly wished her husband was home, not because she was afraid, but because she knew something was wrong. Something deep. Something unstable. But he wasn't there. He had left early in the morning. Business trip, he said. She didn't question it. She never did. So Elena went back inside, locking the door. But Karen's face, that twisted smile, stayed stuck in her mind like a warning she couldn't decode. As the sun set, the neighborhood looked peaceful again. Kids rode bikes, sprinklers sprayed over lawns, and porch lights flickered on. But Elena felt watched. Every time she passed a window, she sensed eyes on her. She eventually shook it off and tried to sleep, convincing herself she was overreacting. Until the next morning, when Karen finally crossed the line. Elena woke to banging on her door. Hard, violent, impatient banging. She rushed downstairs, thinking something terrible must have happened. She opened the door just an inch. Karen shoved it open and forced herself inside. "Karen, what the hell? You think you can ignore me?" Karen screamed, her voice cracking. Her hair was messy, her breathing heavy. She clutched something in her hand, something metallic. A razor. Elena froze. "What are you doing?" "You didn't follow the inspection order. I told you I needed to check your house for compliance. And you locked your door." "Karen, you can't inspect my house. That's not even legal. You think rules don't apply to you?" Karen hissed. Elena stepped back in fear. This was no longer about HOA. This was obsession. This was jealousy. This was mental instability spiraling into something dangerous. "Karen, please leave," Elena said quietly. But Karen lunged. Not for her throat. Not for her arm. Not for her daughter. She lunged for Elena's hair. Elena stumbled back, grabbing Karen's wrist, fighting to keep the razor away. "You want to act superior?" Karen hissed. "Let's see what you look like without your precious hair." Elena screamed, kicking, pushing, trying to break free. But Karen was stronger than she looked. She dragged Elena across the floor, toward the garage, toward the place where no neighbors could see. "Stop, let me go." Elena cried. But Karen didn't stop. She didn't hesitate. She didn't even blink. Inside the garage, she pinned Elena to a chair. The metallic razor buzzed to life. Karen smiled, wide, monstrous, excited, and as the first lock of hair hit the floor, Elena realized Karen didn't want control anymore. She wanted destruction. She wanted humiliation. But the universe has a way of intervening when cruelty reaches its peak. Because just as Karen raised the razor again, just as she whispered, "This is what happens when you challenge me," a deeper voice echoed from the doorway. A voice that froze Karen's blood. A voice Elena knew well, but Karen did not. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" he growled. Her husband had come home early, and Karen had no idea she had just shaved the head of a Mafia boss's wife. For a moment, the world seemed to stop moving. The buzzing razor went silent as Karen's fingers loosened around it. She turned slowly, like someone whose soul had just left their body. And there he stood, Marco DeLuca, Elena's husband. Broad shoulders framed by the doorway, jaw clenched tight enough to crack his teeth, eyes burning with a fury Karen had only seen in nightmares. He wasn't supposed to be home for 2 more days. That's what he'd told Elena. That's what Karen counted on. But what Karen didn't know was that Marco always returned early from business trips. He never liked leaving his wife and daughter alone too long. He lived by a code, family first. Always. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't rush forward. He didn't even blink. He simply looked at the scene. His wife tied to a chair, with her hair scattered on the floor, her face streaked with tears, and Karen standing above her, with a razor still buzzing faintly in her hand. "Marco," Elena whispered, voice trembling with relief and shame all at once. He stepped forward, but his gaze never left Karen. It was the kind of stare that makes men confess crimes they didn't commit. The kind that turns even the strongest into dust. "What?" he said in a voice low and icy. "Did you do to my wife?" Karen tried to speak. Her lips moved, but sound refused to come out. She swallowed hard, backing away like an animal cornered. The razor fell from her trembling fingers and bounced against the floor. I was just enforcing HOA regulations," she finally stammered, her voice small, quivering, desperate to sound authoritative. Marco laughed. Not a normal laugh, one without humor. A warning disguised as amusement. "HOA regulations?" He stepped closer. "Show me the regulation that allows you to put your hands on my wife." Karen blinked fast. She wasn't compliant. She didn't follow protocol. "You shave her head. You drag her. You assaulted her." Each accusation hit Karen like a punch. But Marco wasn't done. "And you thought no one would find out." Karen's breath shortened. She glanced toward the open garage door, hoping a neighbor might walk by, hoping anyone, would be there to save her from the storm building inside Marco's chest. But the street was silent. Empty. Isolated. Exactly as she had planned it to be. Now that isolation belonged to him. "Marco," Elena's voice broke, pulling his attention. "I'm okay, just untie me, please." He rushed to her side, instantly, hands shaking with barely controlled anger as he loosened the knots around her wrists. "I'm here," he whispered. "She won't touch you again. Ever." The moment Elena stood, he wrapped her gently in his arms. She inhaled the familiar scent of cedar and cologne, the scent of safety, the scent of home. But Karen didn't see tenderness. She saw danger. She saw power. She saw a man who could crush her entire world with a single decision. And for the first time, Karen realized she hadn't shaved just any woman's head. She had laid hands on someone untouchable. Marco turned toward her again. "You're going to explain exactly what happened. Every detail. Every reason. And you're going to do it now." Karen's breath hitched. She shook her head. I didn't mean for it to go this far. She disrespected me. She broke rules. Marco stepped closer. "And that gave you the right to assault her?" "I was trying to maintain order." Karen cried out. "You humiliated her," Marco snapped. "You tortured her." He stepped even closer, his face inches from hers. "You enjoyed it." Karen flinched. "Because it was true." "Elena," he said, without looking away from Karen, "go inside. Close the door. Lock it." Elena hesitated. "Marco, don't do anything." But he cut her off softly. "I'm not doing anything. I'm handling something." Elena swallowed. She trusted him, she always had. So she stepped inside, giving one last trembling glance toward the woman who had tormented her. Then she locked the door. Karen and Marco were alone. The garage felt colder suddenly. Much colder. Marco paced slowly, like a panther circling prey. "So, let me get this straight. You woke up today and decided my wife needed to be punished? And no, I didn't know she was your—" "That doesn't matter," Marco interrupted sharply. "You don't do something like this to anyone. But you," he leaned in, voice dropping to a whisper. "You did it to the wrong person." Karen's chest tightened. "Please," she said, voice cracking. I wasn't thinking." I made a mistake. Mistake? He raised an eyebrow. A mistake is putting the trash bin on the wrong curb. A mistake is forgetting a meeting. You assaulted a woman. You tied her up. You shaved her head like she was some trophy. Karen's legs shook so hard she nearly collapsed. Please, I have a family. I have responsibilities. I didn't mean... You didn't mean to get caught, Marco corrected. Karen's breathing turned frantic. What are you going to do to me? What you deserve. Marco echoed. Or what sends a message? She froze. The fear in her eyes deepened like a well with no bottom. Marco, please, I'm begging you. He sighed slowly, rolling his shoulders back. Relax. I'm not going to hurt you. Karen exhaled shakily, relief washing over her. Then Marco's expression shifted. Cold, final, terrifying. But I'm going to destroy everything you think you control. He stepped back, pulled out his phone, and took a picture of the entire scene. The fallen hair, the razor, the ropes, the fear etched across Karen's face. Karen gasped. No, you can't. Oh, I can, Marco replied calmly. And I will. He sent the pictures to someone. Karen noticed the contact name, Veto Legal. Her knees buckled. You're done, Karen. HOA? Gone. Reputation? Gone. Freedom? He let the question hang. We'll see. Karen fell to her knees. Please, I'm sorry. But Marco walked past her, heading inside. Stay right there, he said without looking back. The police are on their way. Karen let out a broken sob, and the moment the door closed behind him, she realized one thing with absolute clarity. She hadn't just ruined her life. She had declared war on a Mafia family. And Marco had only taken his first step. When Marco closed the garage door behind him, it was like shutting out a nightmare, but the damage lingered in the air, thick and suffocating. Elena stood in the kitchen, hands trembling, staring at her reflection in the microwave's glass door. She didn't recognize the woman staring back. Her once long, soft hair, her pride, her comfort, her identity was now butchered, uneven, stripped away in patches. Marco approached slowly, afraid to startle her. Elena, look at me. She wiped her tears roughly with the back of her hand. I don't want you to see me like this. Hey, he whispered, gently lifting her chin. You are still you, and you are still beautiful. Nothing she did changes that. Her lip quivered. She shaved my head, Marco. Like I was a joke. Like I was nothing. His jaw clenched so tightly it shook. He cupped her face softly, thumbs brushing away tears. Listen to me. You are not nothing. You are everything to me, and she will regret ever touching you. But Elena wasn't thinking about revenge. She was thinking about the humiliation, the feeling of being powerless, trapped in a chair while someone laughed at her suffering. She slid to the floor, hugging her knees, shaking uncontrollably. I couldn't stop her. I tried. I tried so hard. Marco knelt beside her. You survived her. That's what matters. That's strength. But Elena didn't feel strong. She felt broken. The emotional collapse hit her all at once. The room spun. Her breaths came in gasps. Her vision blurred. Marco, I can't breathe. He pulled her into his arms, holding her against his chest. It's okay. I'm here. Just breathe with me. He inhaled slowly. She followed. He exhaled. She tried to match it, her body trembling harder each second. Marco whispered, You're safe now. You're safe. But the human mind doesn't let go that easily. Not after trauma. Not after humiliation. Elena buried her face in his shoulder, sobbing so violently her entire body shook. Marco stroked her back, his fingers steady, voice soft, patient. But even he felt helpless. Seeing her shattered like this tore something in him, a piece that would never be the same again. He had seen violence. He had done violence. He had survived wars no one knew about. But nothing hurt more than seeing the woman he loved break down in his arms. Their daughter, little Sophia, peeked from the hallway, eyes wide with fear. Mommy, she whispered. Marco quickly motioned her over. Sweetheart, come here. Sophia ran into her mother's arms. Elena held her tight, kissing the top of her daughter's head, crying harder. "I'm okay, baby," Elena said, voice shaking. "I'm okay. I promise." But Sophia looked at her mother's shaved patches, the red marks on her scalp, and her small hands shook as she touched them gently. "Mommy, who did this?" Elena's lips trembled. She couldn't say the name. Marco answered instead. "Someone very bad. But Daddy is taking care of it." Sophia nodded, trusting him completely. Kids always trusted Marco. His strength was quiet, protective, unbreakable. But inside, Elena's emotional collapse only deepened. She looked down at her daughter and whispered, "I'm so sorry you have to see me like this." "Mommy, you're still pretty," Sophia said innocently. That broke Elena. Another wave of sobs hit her, but this time they were mixed with a painful, tender warmth. Marco stood and reached for his phone. He had already sent evidence to his legal team. But now he needed reinforcements. He dialed another number labeled Luciano Family. The line clicked. A deep voice answered. "What happened, brother?" Marco's voice turned cold. "Karen happened." The voice on the other end grew heavy. "Tell me everything." But before Marco could explain, Elena called out his name softly. "Marco, don't bring them into this. Please." He walked to her, kneeling again. "Elena, she assaulted you. She kidnapped you. She took a razor to your head. I know, but I don't want a war. I don't want anyone hurt because of me." He sighed, deeply, torn between rage and love. "Then what do you want?" Elena swallowed hard. "I want to feel like myself again. I want to feel safe." That was the moment the entire direction of Marco's revenge shifted. He didn't need bullets. He didn't need violence. He needed justice, Elena's kind of justice, something that didn't destroy him, but destroyed the person who broke her. He kissed her forehead gently. "Okay, then we'll do this your way." Elena leaned her head against his chest. "I just can't let her win. Not after this." "You won't," Marco promised. "You already survived her. Now she'll face the consequences." Elena closed her eyes, finally feeling her heartbeat slow, her breath steady. It would take time, maybe weeks, months, to heal the emotional wounds. But she wasn't alone. She had Marco. She had Sophia. And that was enough to start piecing herself back together. As Elena rested on the couch, Marco tucked a blanket around her, brushing a stray patch of hair behind her ear. His eyes darkened, but his voice stayed gentle. "I'm going to step out for a moment, just to make sure she doesn't leave." "Be careful," Elena whispered. He leaned down, kissing her softly. "Always." Marco stepped outside, closing the door quietly. Sophia curled up beside her mother, whispering stories to distract her. Elena watched her daughter's tiny face, grateful for her innocence, her warmth, her love. And for the first time since the ordeal began, Elena felt a spark inside her chest. A spark of strength. A spark of fight. Her hair could grow back. But Karen's power? That was about to be ripped away. Forever. Meanwhile, outside, Marco walked back toward the garage, his expression a mask of calm. Too calm. Inside him, a storm brewed, controlled only by Elena's plea for nonviolence. But he had his own methods, his own connections, his own brand of justice that didn't spill blood but ensured life-changing consequences. And Karen, still on her knees in the garage, finally understood. The emotional collapse inside the house was nothing compared to the collapse coming for her. Marco stood just outside the garage, the cool air brushing over his skin like a warning. He paused, letting the silence settle. He needed clarity before taking his next steps. Clarity not just about what Karen had done today, but what had made her capable of something this twisted. Because people don't wake up one morning and decide to shave a woman's head for entertainment. That kind of cruelty comes from somewhere dark, somewhere old. Karen was still on the floor when Marco walked back in. Her mascara had started to smear, her breath short and sharp like she was drowning on dry land. She looked up at him with wide, terrified eyes. "Please? I'm not a bad person," she whispered. Marco ignored the words. He walked right past her, lifted the razor off the ground, stared at it for a moment, then placed it on the workbench. Calm, precise, controlled. Then he turned to her. Karen, he said, voice steady as stone. Tell me why you did this. I told you, she stammered. She wasn't following the rules. Not good enough. He stepped closer. Nobody goes this far because of codes and rules. This wasn't about HOA. This was personal. So, I'm going to ask you one more time. Why did you do this? Karen's lips trembled. Her fingers twisted nervously. Her composure cracked like thin glass. Because she reminds me of someone, she whispered. Marco raised a brow. Who? Karen swallowed hard. My sister. Marco paused. Not the answer he expected. Karen continued in a shaky voice. My sister, she was always the favorite. The pretty one. The confident one. Everyone loved her. Everyone followed her. And I was always in her shadow. Every room she walked into, I disappeared. Every compliment she got felt like one more punch to my worth. Marco listened without interrupting, but his expression didn't soften. When we got older, she moved away and became successful. I stayed behind, kept living small. Karen's voice cracked. She came back one Christmas and laughed at my life. Called my job pathetic. Called me boring. Said I had nothing. That excuses nothing, Marco said coldly. Karen flinched. I know it doesn't. She pressed a shaking hand to her forehead. But when Elena moved in, she walked around so quietly, so gracefully, so confident without trying, it felt like my sister, all over again. I saw her, and something inside me snapped. I wanted to, I don't know, cut her down before she made me feel small again. Marco leaned forward slightly. So, you shave her head? Karen burst into tears. I didn't plan it. I just wanted her to stop being perfect. Marco stared at her, disgusted, unmoved. He tried to see the logic, the roots of the madness. This wasn't about Elena. This was about Karen's own self-loathing, her insecurities, her jealousy, her lifelong hunger for power, any power. But none of that justified the trauma she inflicted on Elena. What about the other neighbors? Marco asked, folding his arms. How many people have you targeted? Karen stiffened. Don't lie, he added. I've seen your paperwork. I've seen the way you walk this street. You're not just enforcing rules, you're hunting. Her silence was the answer. Marco took out his phone again. This time, he wasn't texting his legal contact. He opened a hidden folder app, one Elena had never seen, but Marco's inner circle used often. He typed Karen's full name. Karen Wells, HOA president, full name, Karen Elise Wells. Age 42. Previous job, assistant manager at Freight and Hair Studio. Terminated for aggressive confrontation with client. Filed restraining order by former co-worker. Multiple neighborhood complaints filed over the last 8 years, each mysteriously dismissed. Marco's eyes tightened. Interesting, he muttered. How did you get that? Karen whispered. Marco ignored her question. Looks like you've had problems long before Elena came along. They were lying, Karen whispered. Twisting things. I swear. Karen. Marco crouched in front of her, making her look directly into his eyes. I deal with people every day who lie to survive. You lie to feel powerful. Karen's lower lip trembled. Please, I have a son, a husband. I can't lose everything. Marco tilted his head. Funny. Elena could have said the same thing while you cut her hair off. Karen squeezed her eyes shut in shame. Marco stood slowly back straight, voice ice cold. I wasn't going to involve Elena in this. But now, I want her to hear every truth about who you are. And for the first time since the shaving incident, Karen panicked, not from fear of consequences, but fear of exposure. And oh, please, she cried, scrambling to her feet. Don't bring her into this. Don't shame me in front of her. Marco's expression darkened. You shaved a woman's head as entertainment, but you are afraid of humiliation? That hit her like a bullet. She stumbled back, collapsing against the wall. Marco continued, You ruled this neighborhood through fear, through manipulation, through threats. And it worked because no one ever dug deep enough to see who you really are. He paused. But I'm not like them. I don't fear you. I don't follow your rules. And I don't care about your excuses. Karen whispered, broken. What are you going to do to me? Expose you. Marco replied simply. Every complaint. Every incident. Every neighbor you bullied. Every lie you told. He walked toward the door, pausing only once to look back. You wanted power? You wanted control? Congratulations. Now, the whole world will see exactly what you did with it. Karen reached out as if to grab his arm, but he stepped away. You don't understand, she cried. They'll destroy me. Marco glanced at her one last time. No, Karen. You destroyed yourself. He walked out of the garage, closing the door, sealing Karen inside with her collapsing future. Inside the house, Elena waited, her fragile strength returning. Her husband ready to bring justice. But outside, in that dim garage, Karen finally realized something she had ignored for far too long. Her past wasn't her weakness. It was her weapon. And she had used it on the wrong woman. Marco was about to unleash consequences she had been avoiding her entire life. And this time, no amount of fake authority could save her. The sun had already slipped behind the houses, leaving the neighborhood bathed in a dim orange glow that slowly turned into the deep blue of night. Porch lights flickered on one by one, giving the illusion of peace. Children's laughter faded. Cars pulled into driveways, doors locked, curtains closed. But inside Elena and Marco's house, the quiet wasn't peaceful. It was heavy, loaded, like the air before a storm. Elena sat on the couch, wrapped in a blanket, her freshly cleaned scalp stinging beneath the soft cloth Marco had placed there. A warm cup of chamomile tea trembled in her hands as she stared at the floor, replaying every second of Karen's cruelty, every tug of her hair, every mocking laugh, every moment she felt helpless. Marco entered the living room slowly, watching her with an ache that reached deep into his ribs. You okay? He asked softly. Elena nodded, but her voice betrayed her. I keep hearing the sound, the razor, the feeling. Marco sat beside her, pulling her gently into his arms. You're safe. She can't hurt you again. I promise. But even promises couldn't erase trauma. Elena leaned into him, but her eyes drifted toward the front door. She's still out there, and she's unpredictable. Marco nodded slowly. Not for long. A knock echoed through the house. A sharp, fast, panicked knock. Elena's breath caught in her throat. Marco stood, instantly his protective instincts roaring to life. Stay behind me. He moved toward the door silently, his posture calm but battle-ready, a man stepping into a situation he had seen 1,000 times in far darker places. When he opened the door, the porch light illuminated a sight so pitiful, so desperate, even Marco paused. Karen stood there, shaking, eyes red and swollen, hair wild, clutching her HOA clipboard like a shield. Marco, please, she begged, stepping forward. I need to talk to you. Please, this can't go any further. He stepped outside, blocking her from entering the home. You have 30 seconds. Karen's voice cracked, but she pushed through. I know you sent that information to a lawyer. I know what's coming. But please, please, I need time. My husband is out of town. My son is at my sister's house. If people find out what I did, if the HOA votes me out, I'll lose everything. Marco's face remained unreadable. You should have thought about that before you shaved a woman's head for fun. I wasn't thinking clearly. Karen cried, hands shaking violently. After you left, I realized how far I went. I realized how sick it was. I never meant. Marco cut her short. Stop. You meant every second of it. Karen's lip trembled. I just want to explain myself to Elena. Please, let me talk to her. Marco took a slow step forward, his voice low and deadly calm. You come one step near her, and I will make sure you never step foot in this neighborhood again. Karen froze. I didn't come to hurt anyone. I came because I can't sleep knowing what I did. I need to apologize. Marco didn't even blink. The time for apologies ended the moment you locked that garage door. Karen dropped her clipboard, falling to her knees on the front lawn. Please, I'm begging you. Don't destroy me. Marco stared down at her, not with pity, not with anger, but with judgment. You destroyed yourself. Tears streamed down Karen's cheeks as she whispered, "You don't understand, my whole life has fallen apart. My husband won't stand by me. My son hates me. The HOA is planning an emergency meeting. Everyone is turning against me." Marco folded his arms. "Good." Karen choked on a sob. "Please, I've never had power, anywhere. Not in my home. Not in my marriage. Not with my family. The HOA was all I had. And I used it wrong, I know that, but if you take that too, I'll have nothing." Marco crouched down, face inches from hers. "You had power. Real power. To help people. To build something. To make this neighborhood better. You could have used that. But you chose cruelty." Karen hugged herself, rocking. "I don't know why I'm like this." Marco stood up straight. "Then tonight, you'll learn. Because this ends now." Before Karen could ask what he meant, 3 cars pulled up silently along the curb. Black sedans. Tinted windows. Karen's breath hitched. She recognized the vehicles, not the drivers, but the style. This wasn't police. This wasn't HOA. This was something else. Something worse. 3 men stepped out, well-dressed, serious, calm. The kind of men who didn't ask questions, they delivered results. Karen stumbled back. "Marco W., who are they?" "Witnesses." Marco replied simply. "They'll make sure everything tonight is documented. Every word. Every action." Why?" "Because you don't just owe Elena an apology," Marco said. "You owe the entire neighborhood an explanation. And tomorrow morning at the emergency HOA meeting, you're going to give it." Karen's eyes widened in horror. "No, please. Marco, they'll eat me alive. They'll ruin me." Marco turned away. "You already ruined yourself. Now you face it." The men approached her with respectful distance, no threat, no force, but enough authority to make her crumble. "Elena doesn't want violence," Marco said, voice calm, "so there won't be any. But she does want justice. And justice starts with the truth." Karen dropped her head into her hands, shaking. "I can't." Marco stared at her. "You will." The men escorted Karen toward the car, not because she was a prisoner, but because she needed structure, control, and supervision. Karen looked back at Marco one last time. "Please, don't make me do this." But Marco didn't answer. He simply walked back into his home. Inside, Elena was waiting, wide-eyed, tense, clutching her blanket. "What happened?" she asked. Marco closed the door behind him. "She's going to face everyone tomorrow. No hiding. No excuses." Elena's breath steadied. "And after that?" Marco leaned down and kissed her forehead gently. "After that, this neighborhood will finally know who their real monster is." Outside, the cars drove away with Karen inside. Toward a night she would never forget. Toward the consequences she had feared her whole life. Toward a confrontation she could no longer escape. And for the first time since her reign of torment began, Karen wasn't in control. She was terrified. And alone. Morning came quietly, too quietly. The neighborhood usually buzzed with lawnmowers, kids on bikes, and early-rising dog walkers, but today felt different. Still, heavy, like the entire street held its breath for what was coming. Inside the house, Elena sat at the dining table with a soft beanie on her head that Marco had given her before sunrise. "You don't have to go," Marco said gently, pouring her tea. "I can handle everything." But Elena shook her head. "No, I want to be there. I need to hear her say it. I need to see her face when she admits what she did." Her voice wasn't shaking anymore. It had strength in it, new strength, not from revenge, from reclaiming her dignity. Marco nodded with quiet pride. "Then I'll be right beside you." At 9 a.m. sharp, the emergency HOA meeting began at the community center. Usually, these gatherings were boring, complaints about hedges, parking spots, and the occasional raccoon problem. But today, the room was overflowing. Every seat taken, people standing in the back, whispering, waiting, because the rumor had already spread. Karen did something unforgivable, and today, she'd be forced to face everyone she'd ever bullied. When Marco and Elena entered the hall, The room went silent. People didn't know the details yet, but they could feel something serious had happened. And when they saw the thin beanie on Elena's head, covering her scalp, sympathy rippled through the crowd. Marco guided her to the front row and stood beside her like a silent wall of protection. A few minutes later, the door opened again. Karen walked in. Or, rather, she stumbled in. Her eyes were swollen from crying. Her hair was a tangled mess. Her shoulders slumped, her clipboard nowhere in sight. She looked like a woman who had been awake all night, fighting her own shadow and losing. Gasps spread around the room. Is that Karen? What happened to her? She looks destroyed. Karen walked to the podium with trembling legs. Two men from Marco's circle stood in the back, not threatening, but ensuring everything proceeded truthfully, calmly, and without manipulation. The HOA vice president, Mr. Lane, cleared his throat. We're here today because serious allegations have been made against President Karen Wells. She has requested the opportunity to speak first. Requested wasn't the right word. Marco had required it. Karen clutched the podium so tightly her knuckles went white. For several seconds, she couldn't speak. Her throat fluttered. Tears already threatened. Then she looked at Elena and broke. I did it, Karen whispered, voice cracking so badly the microphone screeched. Everything she says, it's true. The room erupted in shocked murmurs. Karen wiped her face with shaking hands. I abused my position. I targeted her. Her voice hitched. I dragged her into a garage. I tied her to a chair. And I shaved her head. A collective gasp tore through the room. Elena looked down, gripping Marco's hand. Hearing it out loud hurt, but it also felt like a piece of her soul stitching back together. Karen continued, voice trembling uncontrollably. I humiliated her. I scared her. I made her feel worthless. I used this neighborhood's rules as a weapon. Against so many of you, she swallowed hard. Against anyone who made me feel small or invisible. The room shifted, people straightened, eyes wide, because every person who had ever been fined unfairly, every person she'd yelled at, every homeowner she'd threatened, was suddenly remembering their own experience. Karen's tears flowed like rain. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I know none of you will give it. I just needed you all to know the truth. Mr. Lane stepped forward. Karen, based on your admission, the HOA board will be voting on your immediate removal. You don't need to vote. Karen's voice broke in surrender. I resign. Whispers turned to murmurs, murmurs to shock. Karen Wells, the untouchable queen of the HOA, had stepped down. But justice wasn't done yet. Marco rose from his seat, the room falling silent at the sight of him. He walked toward the podium with calm, controlled steps. Karen flinched, but he didn't look at her. Instead, he addressed the room. My wife is strong, Marco said, voice deep and steady. Stronger than what happened to her. But what was done to her can't be undone. And what Karen admitted today isn't just a mistake. It's a crime. Karen's breath caught, but Marco continued. Elena doesn't want violence. She doesn't want revenge. But she does deserve justice. Legal justice. He turned slightly, meeting Karen's broken gaze for the first time. I've filed charges. The evidence has already been submitted. Karen crumbled, collapsing back into a chair. But Marco wasn't finished. This neighborhood deserves better leadership. Someone who respects people instead of controlling them. Someone who brings community instead of fear. He motioned to Mr. Lane. And as of today, we're rebuilding from the ground up. The neighbors nodded, some even clapping. Others approached Elena afterward, expressing their sympathy, offering support, promising things would change. For the first time since she moved in, Elena felt welcomed, seen, safe. Karen was escorted out quietly, not by force, but by reality. Her reign was over. Her consequences were real, and her mask had finally shattered. As Marco and Elena left the building, sunlight washed over them. Elena removed her beanie slowly, not hiding, not ashamed. Marco wrapped his arm around her waist. You okay? He asked softly. She nodded. More than okay. I feel free. He kissed her temple. Good, because it's over now. Elena looked back once, just once, at the community center where her humiliation had transformed into healing. Karen was gone. Justice was delivered. And Elena's life, her peace, was finally restored. But Marco knew one thing as he held his wife close. No matter how dark the world became, he would always be the light that fought for her. Always. And this time, the whole neighborhood finally knew exactly who stood on the right side. If this story shook you, if it made your heart race, made you angry, or made you feel something real, then I want to hear from you. Tell me in the comments. What would you have done if you were in Elena's place? And if you're watching all the way to this point, it means you're part of this community now, a community that stands against cruelty, injustice, and abuse of power. So, before you scroll away, make sure you subscribe, hit that like button, and turn on notifications. More gripping, emotional, real-life stories are coming. And trust me, you don't want to miss what's next.